There's this quiet, persistent voice whispering in your head, not loud enough to scream, but constant enough to weigh you down. It says, "You should have done more. They're doing better than you. Why can't you be like them?" And the worst part? You've started believing it. But here's the truth. That voice didn't start in adulthood. It was planted early, watered by expectations, comparisons, and silence. You might be thriving by external standards. Maybe you got the job, the degree, the partner. Yet deep inside, something still feels missing, as if no matter what you do, you're just never quite enough. You scroll through your feed, and it feels like everyone else is 10 steps ahead. Someone just got married, another landed a 6-figure job, and a third is hiking through Bali while you're sitting in your room, wondering if it's too late. You replay conversations, overanalyze every decision, and chase achievement, hoping it will silence the echo inside. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why do I feel this way even when I'm trying my best? Why does my mind treat success like a moving target? It's not because you're broken. It's not because you're lazy or weak or behind. It's because something deeper within you, something ancient and hidden, has been trying to speak for years. Carl Jung called it the shadow. It's not just the dark parts of you, the anger, the envy, the fears. It's also the pieces of you that were once bright but got shut down. Your curiosity, your voice, your softness, all the parts you learned were too much or not enough for this world. And when those parts are buried, they don't disappear. They show up as overthinking, as self-sabotage, as burnout. They appear in the way you shrink yourself in rooms where you're meant to shine, in the way you seek validation in hearts that never earned you. Feeling not enough is not a flaw in you. It's a signal, a whisper from the part of you you've been told to hide. And here's the most powerful truth. That part of you, the one you're ashamed of, the one you keep locked away, isn't here to ruin your life. It's here to bring you back to it. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. So before we go any further, take a breath. Not the shallow kind, a full one. Let it fill your chest, your stomach, your back. Feel your feet on the ground. You're not falling behind. You're finally pausing long enough to listen. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into this shadow, where it comes from, why it forms, and how it quietly shapes almost everything you do. Not to pathologize you, not to fix you, but to understand. Because when you understand your shadow, you stop fighting yourself, and you begin, at last, to come home. You might think the parts of yourself that feel insecure, angry, or ashamed are flaws. But what if they're not? What if they are unacknowledged parts of you, quietly asking to be seen? Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, introduced the idea of the shadow, not as something evil or broken, but as the unconscious part of our psyche where we store the traits, feelings, and desires we were taught to suppress. Think of it as a closet in your mind, where you've thrown everything that didn't fit the image of who you thought you should be. When you were a child, you were naturally expressive. If you cried loudly, asked too many questions, or got too excited, you may have been told to be quiet, to behave. Over time, you learned which emotions were welcome and which ones weren't. So you hid parts of yourself to be accepted. That's how the shadow begins. It's not just the dark emotions we repress. Sometimes it's our brilliance, our creativity, even our joy. If you were told not to show off or to keep your head down, you might have buried your light right next to your shame. And here's where it gets interesting. The shadow doesn't stay hidden. It leaks out in overreactions, self-sabotage, jealousy, procrastination. Maybe you find yourself lashing out at people who remind you of traits you don't like in yourself. Or you feel deeply insecure despite external success. That's the shadow whispering, But the shadow isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you, using outdated rules you learned in childhood. And here's the truth. The parts of you that you've rejected are often the most powerful. Your shadow holds your authenticity, your passion, your truth. To work with the shadow is not to fight it, but to listen, to become curious about why certain things trigger you, to notice what stories you've been telling yourself about who you're allowed to be. That's where healing begins. Think of your shadow like a child who's been locked in a room for years, knocking softly at first, then louder. It doesn't want to ruin your life. It wants you to open the door. So instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" try asking, "What part of me hasn't been heard yet?" This is not about fixing yourself. You're not broken. You're unfolding. Facing your shadow can feel like standing in front of a mirror that shows more than just your reflection. It shows the parts of you that you've tried to ignore, the fear, the envy, the need, the grief. But this mirror isn't here to shame you. It's here to invite you home. The first step is simple, but not easy. Notice. Pay attention to your emotional triggers. When someone says something that makes you disproportionately upset or anxious, pause. That's a clue. The shadow lives in those reactions. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And what memory or belief might this be connected to? Let's say you feel invisible in a group. The shadow might be holding an old story, that your voice doesn't matter. Instead of pushing the feeling away, sit with it. Breathe into it. You're not regressing. You're reconnecting. Next, witness. Create space to meet your shadow without judgment. Write about the parts of yourself you find hard to accept. Talk to your inner child. What did they need that they didn't receive? Often, it's not the emotion that's the problem. It's the way we shame ourselves for having it. And then, reframe. What if that anger is actually a sign that your boundaries matter? What if the envy points to a dream you've buried? What if your fear is a call to step into a bigger life? The paradox of shadow work is this. The deeper you go into the dark, the more light you find. Jung said, "Gold is found in the shadow." Within those castaway pieces lie your creativity, your courage, your wild, unfiltered self. Integration doesn't mean the shadow disappears. It means it no longer controls you from the dark. It becomes a companion, not a saboteur. When you make space for all of you, not just the polished parts, you stop performing and start living. This work takes tenderness. It takes time. But every step you take toward your shadow is a step toward your wholeness. Not perfection, wholeness. That's the goal. If you've made it this far, your soul is already whispering, it's time. Time to meet yourself more fully. Time to move from survival into aliveness. Shadow work is deep, but it doesn't have to be abstract. Here are 3 tools you can begin using right now. Shadow check-in, daily, weekly. Take 5 minutes each day or week to write. What triggered me today? What emotions came up? What did I feel I had to hide? This simple ritual builds awareness. It shows you patterns. And in those patterns, you'll start to see your shadow's shape. Mirror reframe. Stand in front of a mirror. Look into your eyes and speak to the part of you that feels ashamed, insecure, or afraid. Say, I see you. You are allowed to be here. Repeat it. Mean it. Over time, you will notice a softening. That's integration. Enough list. Each evening, write down 3 things that made you feel like you were enough. Not because of performance, but because you existed. Maybe it's a smile you gave, a boundary you held, or a moment of stillness. This rewires your brain to see your inherent worth, not just your achievements. Remember, shadow work is soul work. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about coming home to who you already are. When you embrace the parts of you that once felt unlovable, you become whole. And wholeness changes everything. It changes how you love, how you speak, how you show up. Not perfectly, but truthfully. So if this message touched something in you, don't let it fade. Share it. Subscribe. Come back to it when the world feels heavy. Because you are not alone in this work. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are unfolding. And that is enough.